Okay, as I get used to this new way of doing things, I'm sort of seeing some different ways I can use my lectures. I will include some, and you'll run into some here that are going to be longer, 15 to 25-minute videos. But I'm also going to pepper in some of these little short ones, I think, because there's times when I'm doing my reading when I think they've kind of gone over something very quickly that I think deserves a little bit more attention, a little bit more thought. And so in this section of the textbook where we're describing the scientific method and bringing it up, there's this discussion of philosophy and psychology. And so I just want to hit that point really quickly here. I said it in a previous lecture, and let me say it again here. Psychology kind of begins where philosophy ends. And so to understand what I mean by that, many philosophers believed in a notion called rationalism, and René Descartes is a prime example of that, and a prime proponent of that as well. Rationalism was the idea that you could, with principled thought, if you thought through an issue well enough, and think of philosophers, they like their thought experiments and all these kinds of things, that if you think enough, and maybe if you argue with other thinkers, so either alone or together, you could kind of work through some concept enough to maybe come to the truth of it simply through the process of rational thought. That if you were sure your thought was rational and you followed a certain line, remember René Descartes starting with, I think therefore I am, that was his beginning. He couldn't deny that fact, and he thought, okay, if I start with that and then I build other things that follow from that, I can get at the truth of things. Okay, and that's what philosophers have been doing since, Aristotle and in fact before in the East and in other places. At some point, and John Locke is the philosopher we really associate with this, this notion of empiricism came about. And empiricism kind of, we have this colloquial way of saying things like, I won't believe it till I see it with my own eyes. Right? So somebody says something's true, and until I see it, I will not believe it's true. That's kind of what the empiricism notion is about. It's about gaining truth through our senses. This is how people see it. But what it really means is testing your ideas. So yes, you can use the rationalist kind of approach to come up to what you think is the truth, what you believe is an accurate story about something. And if you've kind of thought it through, what we're going to call that in the scientific method is your theory, if it's a big idea about what's true. And from that theory, we can draw specific hypotheses, a prediction that follows from that theory. If what you think is right, then a certain thing should happen. And what we really like are things that we've never even looked for before, or never even thought of examining. But according to this theory, in this situation, something should happen that would be interesting. And it would be especially interesting if other theories don't think it should happen. But then that's where psychology begins. Okay, we have this theory, we maybe can derive a prediction, and now let's see if what we think will happen will happen. Let's actually put the idea to the test. And that's what empiricism is all about. In this chapter, you're going to see we're going to slowly get to experiments. Experiments are the pinnacle of empiricism. They are the optimal way to get at what we're going to call cause and effect relationships. That's sort of the end of the story, and I'm telling it to you now. That's where we're going to go. But we're going to get there eventually by talking about some of those first steps too. Like, how do you come up with a theory? Where do these theories come from? And what about the predictions you derive from that theory? Do they have to have certain characteristics? And they do. They have to be testable is the primarily one. And we want ideas that are falsifiable. So we'll talk about those as well. But at this point, I just want you to get that distinction between philosophy and psychology, and therefore why psychology values experiments so much. We are the branch of knowledge about ourselves. Philosophy is that too, but we are the ones that put our ideas to the test via experiments. And that's what so many psychologists embrace, is that experimental approach to finding the truth in things. Yeah. And so that's what we're really going to talk about a little more in this chapter. So I'm just going to leave it there for now, and I will see you in the next lecture. Bye-bye.